This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports, and you are looking at the cylinder heads and rocker arm selection for our 496 cubic inch FE that will be fed by a centrifugal supercharger. We've been working on this project for probably the good part of a year and a half, just accumulating parts and doing some mock-ups inside the vehicle and that sort of thing. But we're making some progress now. The machine shop is, my machinist is working on the block. And if you rewind a couple of days, you will see me going over the piston and rod choices for this engine and assembling those and checking some rod bearing clearances. But this is the top end, or will be the top end of our project. This is a BBM head. And it started life as an out-of-the-box cylinder head. These flow somewhere around the 280, 290 mark as they come from BBM. We made a couple of changes. These were bought from another supplier and were sent to me. But considering that we went with such a large cubic inch displacement and we're dealing with forced induction and that sort of thing, we made a couple of changes. One of the changes is we dropped to, or didn't drop, we changed to an Inconel exhaust valve. Inconel is a material that will take the heat and the combustion pressures and that sort of thing a lot better than a normal stainless steel. It's 11 32-second stems. We're using a 200 intake valve and a 650 exhaust valve. Our camshaft gross lift with the 1:8 rocker ratio on the intake side and 1.75 on the exhaust side is 666 lift on the intake side and 681 on the exhaust side. So our heads flow at that lift 320 CFM on the intake side and 225 on the exhaust side. A good performing head, and as with forced induction, the supercharger makes up a lot of room, but if you start with a well-flowing head, then you get better results, and that's just the bottom line of anything that goes with engine stuff. But we fitted them with these Manley valve springs. These have been stress relieved and polished. Titanium valve spring retainers. So a lot of money just in the valve spring package by itself. And of course you can see that the heads have been milled for the rocker arm system that we're going to use. Typically you're used to seeing the pads that the shaft mounted rocker stand will sit on. This is what's left of your oil feed that goes to the shaft. Normally that comes up and feeds up through this counterbore hole that the stand that your rocker stand sits on right here. When you mill these down, it kind of gets rid of all of this. As I said, they've been ported. So they are assembled, ready to bolt on. So on my general rule of thumb is with anything over 600 pounds of spring pressure on an aluminum head, I automatically move to the T&D paired rocker system. And it just doesn't get any better as far as rocker systems go. And this is the difference between a regular shaft mounted rocker and this system. This system does not use the 4 3/8 rocker studs that go into the head. I have pulled those out of aluminum heads before with a little over 600 pounds of open spring load, so that is not a good thing to happen, and I try to avoid that with all my ability on other builds. The difference is that the T&D paired rocker system uses this mounting plate. This is, I call it a sub plate, but what happens is it's held on to the cylinder head using the head bolts, and they supply these head bolts that go down. I'm struggling because I've got the camera in one hand and parts in the other, but this system holds this subplate to the head and is held on by the head bolts. Once this plate is bolted down and then this other bar is bolted to it, then your individual, well, they're not individual, it's a paired rocker system. So these are pairs. You have 3 bolts that hold this paired rocker system down to that bar. So really stout setup. These have an offset rocker cup or a push rod cup in the rocker arm on the intake side, so that'll give us some room, push rod clearance in our intake manifold. But these will take as much as you can throw on them. The difference is that they are push rod oiling only, and obviously when you mill the heads and you get rid of where this passage leads to, then you have to rely on the push rod oiling. They are neat. So we're running, I think about 650 pounds of open pressure, and I think I'll have to look back at my build notes, but about 275 pounds of seat to make sure that we keep those intake valves shut. Here is the intake manifold that we will be using for this build. It is an Edelbrock Victor. It has been ported as well. These things don't do too bad off the shelf with the standard size port dimensions, and they'll feed a 390 or 428 size engine not too badly. And but when you step up to larger displacement, then some port work has to be done, and you have to be pretty careful on porting because material gets dangerously close to your push rod tubes, so sometimes those have to be sleeved. These were ported alongside our BBM cylinder heads. So I use some pretty good porters, and they do really good work. This one is set up for EFI. Well, I don't think we're 100% locked into fuel injection yet. We may go to a carbureted setup, a blow-through carburetor. So if that happens, then our fuel injector rails, the mounting holes and the injector holes will be plugged. All right, for our camshaft, this is one of my custom, it's a billet core solid roller camshaft. We are at 258, 270 at 50 thousandths duration. As I spoke about a few minutes ago, we are around the 665 gross lift on the intake side and 680 on the exhaust side. It's on a 113 lobe separation. The lobes were chosen to be not too aggressive, so because this is a street vehicle, so we don't want to beat the valve train up, but they were chosen to make good horsepower with our centrifugal supercharger. For the lifters, we're going to go with these Morel, and we've had these parts sitting around for a little while, haven't we, Steve? But we're going to finally start putting some stuff together. All right, guys, just wanted to go over the top end, some of the top end parts that we're going to be using for this build. Things are coming together a little bit now, kind of slowly, but they're coming together, and should have a block ready to look at soon, and we can start doing some mock-up and assembly. Thank you guys for hanging around and watching the video. If you haven't done so yet, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on all the cool Ford parts and Ford engines that are coming through the shop. Hope you all have a good weekend.